A man reaches into his pocket to check a message. That is the last normal thing he will ever do. September 17th, 2024, Beirut. 3:30 in the afternoon. Across the city, across the Bekaa Valley, across southern Lebanon, thousands of men do the exact same thing at the exact same moment. They reach for their pagers. They press 2 buttons to read a message from their commanders. The explosions come in a wave. Not 1, not 10, thousands, simultaneously. In markets, in hospitals, in cars, in homes. The blasts are small, no bigger than a firecracker in isolation, but they are happening everywhere at once, and the people holding the devices are the ones absorbing every bit of force. Hands destroyed, eyes gone, men dropping in streets, in checkout lines, behind desks, mid-sentence. The air smelled like burning plastic and something sharper, the residue of a very precise kind of violence. By the time the smoke cleared, over 3,500 people had been wounded. So how does something like this actually happen? How does an entire military organization end up carrying the weapon that destroys it, and never once suspect a thing? That answer starts not in Lebanon. It starts with a decision Hezbollah made because they thought they were being smart. Hezbollah has always known it is being watched. Since the 1980s, the group has operated under constant Israeli surveillance, drones overhead, agents embedded in communities, signals intelligence intercepting communications around the clock. For years, they adapted. They changed phones. They changed channels. They encrypted everything. And still, Israel found them. Senior commanders died in targeted strikes. Operations collapsed before they began. The pattern was undeniable. By 2024, Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah had reached a conclusion. Smartphones were not tools, they were traps. In February of that year, he stood before cameras and said it plainly. He called mobile phones the Israeli agent in your hands. Every device with a SIM card was a beacon, every GPS chip a confession. Israel could activate a microphone remotely. It could pull location data from cell towers. It could map an entire organization just by watching which phones clustered together at the same coordinates. Nasrallah wasn't wrong. So what do you do when your enemy can see you through your own pocket? You go backward. Pagers, old technology, one-way receivers, a device that only receives a signal. It never sends one back. No GPS, no cellular handshake, no way for a surveillance system to know where the device was or who was holding it. Hezbollah's procurement team began looking for a reliable model, something rugged, long battery life, waterproof, field-ready. In 2023, a saleswoman reached out with exactly that, the Gold Apollo AR924. She knew the product well. She'd sold communications equipment for years. She walked them through the specs, months of battery life on a single charge, cable recharging capability, alphanumeric display for coded messages. She was professional, credible, and completely unaware of what she was actually selling. She had no connection to any intelligence agency. As far as she knew, she was closing a sale. But who was actually behind that sale? Behind her stood a company called BAC Consulting, registered in Budapest, Hungary, operating out of a duplex on a quiet residential street, the kind of address that looks real enough to pass a background check and small enough to never invite scrutiny. On paper, BAC held a legitimate licensing agreement with Gold Apollo, the actual Taiwanese manufacturer. They were authorized to produce and distribute devices under the Gold Apollo brand in certain regions. A second company, Norta Global, based in Bulgaria, handled the money flow and logistics. Each entity appeared just real enough to survive inspection. Hezbollah's procurement team ran checks. They found a real brand, a real license, a real intermediary, a real saleswoman. What they didn't find was the factory where the batteries were made. Inside each pager, sealed inside the lithium-ion battery pack, engineers had placed approximately 3 grams of PETN, pentaerythritol tetranitrate, a military-grade explosive, chemically stable, shaped to fit perfectly within the battery casing. It looked like a battery under X-ray. It felt like a battery in your hand. It passed every check Hezbollah ran, and over the following months, roughly 5,000 of these devices were distributed across the organization's entire command structure. From field operatives to mid-level commanders to the elite Radwan unit. Every level of Hezbollah was now carrying a bomb they believed was a phone replacement. For months, nothing happened. The pagers worked exactly as advertised. Messages came through, commanders responded, the network functioned, and somewhere, someone was watching all of it. waiting. Then in early September 2024, two operatives noticed something strange. Their pagers were warm. Not hot, just warm. Unusual. No explanation. The report reached Hezbollah's security leadership. On September 11th, they made a decision. Pull a small batch of devices and send them to Iran for forensic analysis. And what happens when Iranian scientists get those pagers on a laboratory table? They find everything. The PETN, the trigger circuit, the entire architecture of the trap, the shell companies, the fake licensing trail, all of it, exposed in a single afternoon. Israel had 1 week. On September 16th, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sat with his top security officials. The operation was not supposed to go live yet. A broader military campaign against Hezbollah wasn't scheduled. Triggering the devices early meant starting a war on an unplanned timeline. But the alternative, watching nearly a decade of work get discovered on a laboratory table in Tehran, was not an option. They authorized the strike. The next afternoon, a signal went out across Lebanon. It looked like a standard command message, routine, the kind commanders received every day, but this one required something specific. To read it, the user had to press 2 buttons simultaneously. Both hands on the device near the body. The detonations lasted less than a second each. The engineers had calibrated the charge with precision, test dummies, blast radius calculations. The goal wasn't to destroy a room, it was to destroy the hands and eyes of the person holding the device, while leaving bystanders unharmed. The pressure wave dissipated almost instantly beyond arm's length. The person holding the pager absorbed everything. The person standing next to them often walked away with nothing. Around 42 people died. More than 3,500 were wounded. The following day, walkie-talkies exploded, then solar panels, then other devices. The blasts stretched across 48 hours, and the effect reached far beyond the physical. People stopped touching electronics. Rumors spread that air conditioners were rigged. Hezbollah's entire support network, the volunteers, the families, the civilian infrastructure that keeps the organization functioning, collectively froze. Leadership abandoned encrypted devices entirely and fell back to motorcycle couriers and face-to-face meetings. Face-to-face meetings, it turned out, were far easier for Israeli intelligence to track. In the weeks that followed, a series of targeted airstrikes killed several of Hezbollah's top commanders, men whose locations were only known because the organization had been forced back to the oldest form of communication. The pager was chosen because it couldn't be weaponized. That was the only reason it worked. Now here's the harder question. Was any of this legal? 2 children died on September 17th. UN human rights experts called the operation a potential war crime, pointing to detonations in public markets and civilian spaces without knowledge of who was nearby. Israeli officials and some legal scholars pushed back, arguing the pager network was a closed military-only system, that every device was a legitimate military target, and that roughly 42 deaths from over 3,000 simultaneous detonations demonstrates a level of precision rarely seen in any military operation. Both arguments are serious, neither fully closes the question. It may remain unresolved for years. What doesn't need a legal ruling is this. Someone built a fake company in Hungary, hired real salespeople who believed in the product, filed real licensing paperwork with a real Taiwanese manufacturer, and spent years placing explosive batteries into the hands of an enemy, all while that enemy believed they had finally found a way to disappear. So what does that mean for everything else? Every procurement officer at every government agency, every military contractor, every hospital network buying medical devices from overseas suppliers, they're all sitting with that same question now. Because the pager attack didn't just happen in Lebanon. It happened to the idea that you can trust what arrives in the box. The global economy runs on that trust. It just doesn't know how much of it is left.